Bit of an introduction to you. So we talked about the idea of for Dana Miller's formula for change, about a vision of what education could look like, and Rob really needs no introduction. He's going to be talking about a vision, but I'm going to do an introduction. I know people say that he needs no introduction and then give an introduction, don't they? I'm just about to do that. So he joined us on episode 70 of the EduFuturist podcast after a recommendation from Mr. John Neal. You're getting a few mentions today, John. And Rob is the manager at Agora School in Roermond in the Netherlands. They've just won that international school. That's what it says in the note. So I'm reading that. So what Rob and his team are doing is simply mind-blowing. He's going to show you some examples of that. Described as a primary school for big kids, their focus on learning, not teaching, is clear for all to see. And I'm sure as he speaks, you'll be blown away by what he has to say. Find him on Twitter at Rob Houben. And don't forget to put your questions for Rob in the comments, and you could be the next winner of one of these bad boys and a t-shirt. So, ladies and gents, over to Rob Houben.
Yeah. Well, it's a bit strange to start this with my daughter next to me jumping because she came out of school earlier than expected. So I have to attend to that for like 10 seconds and then I can start. Kan maar door, hè? Of je hebt liever allebei hier. Ja. Okay, well, I'm ready, guys. So you're already seeing my slides up. And what we need to do is, oh, my girl, really. Sorry. Well, the slide you are seeing is what I always show to all the people who visit us in Roermond. And I always tell them, forget what you know about teaching and start with what you really know about learning. And that's what I tell everybody who enters our building. Agora is a government-funded public secondary school, and at Agora we learn students to manage their own learning process. And we do this without courses, without classes, even without class timetables or age groups. We learn them to set and achieve their own goals and their own challenges. And when students start at Agora, we ask them, what do you want to make, do, or learn? And whatever the answer is, we go from there. We figure out the talents, interests, and ambitions of the students that way. And I'm going to tell you a story about how we stopped teaching and why we stopped teaching. And it's going to be a story about becoming a successful school based on inspiration and motivation. So first of all, at Agora, born in the Nikkei building you saw before, we believe that school has to be a good mix of Harvard University, that for us represents a place where you can access all the knowledge in the world. And that's easy because we all are connected to the internet. So accessing that knowledge is not a problem in our school. It also has to have a little bit of a Buddhist monastery, a place where you can feel at ease. And it also, of course, has to be a creative laboratory where you can make and create everything, from a go-kart, a robot, to a nice sweater or pants. And we called it Agora because that's old Greek for marketplace, a place where you can debate, interact, see new things, get inspired by others, and where you inspire others. And last but not least, it has to feel like Disneyland. There should be kind people around you who want to assist you in any way. And when you look around, you get this happy and amazed feeling. This is how our school looks from the inside. It's a place where all the people who work there trust in the fact that children want to learn. And if we doubt this fact, we sell them short. There aren't any children who don't want to learn. There are children who don't want to learn what you want to tell them. And that's your problem as a teacher, not theirs. This is how our classrooms look like because, well, we don't need any classrooms. We just have rooms where children make their own environment. Because at least at school should be a place where children can be happy, despite what's going on in the rest of their lives. It should be a place where we give them the basis to be confident, inspired, and challenged. A place where they feel at home. And that's what you see here. They even built their own desks. And well, this is my daughter. And I've made this video a couple of years ago. And a couple of days before we could shoot this video, my daughter couldn't ride a bike at all. She had a tricycle with the pedals on the front wheel connected. And she wasn't able to get that tricycle to move. Too much friction, I guess, too less muscles. I don't know what the problem was, but a combination of those two, I guess. And then a friend of ours brought this bike. And my daughter immediately said, "Daddy, I want to learn to ride that bike." And I said, "Well, it's too big and you can't even move the tricycle." And my daughter said, "I don't care. I want to ride that bike. Then you make it smaller." And I was able to put the seat down and get her on it and just started running. And you know how it is. You take them by the neck and run around the street. And after 15 minutes, they cry, so you can quit and go at home. But the day after that, she came up to me again and she said, "Daddy, we should try to ride the bike again." And well, then you run for like 20 minutes and they cry again, so you can go home again. And the day after that, she didn't ask anything. So I thought, well, this was like a phase. But on the fourth day, she asked me again. And I could shoot that video that day because within 2 minutes, she said, "Well, Daddy, just let me go." And I've did that. And I'm not telling you this story because I'm a proud father. That, of course, I am a proud story, but that's not the clue in this story. The clue in this story is that immediately after I shot this video, one of my neighbors came up to me and said, "Rob, what is her age?" And I said, "Well, she's 2 and 9 months." And my neighbor said, well, he didn't say anything. My neighbor said didn't say anything. He just went home, grabbed his 5-year-old son, grabbed the bike of his 5-year-old son, put him on it, and started running. And in the evening, he rang my doorbell, and he said to me, "How many hours did you do this?" And I said, "Well, like 15 minutes a day." And he said, 15 minutes a day? Okay, I know enough. And he went home. And I saw him every evening, the next 3 weeks, running with his child. And after 3 weeks, do you know what the end result was? Well, you can't respond, so I'm going to tell you immediately. The end result was that his son hated biking. If that stupid dad would have waited up until summer, because then we have like 20 kids riding their bikes up and down the street, there would be that moment that his son would think, well, I love to join them. And there would be that moment that his son would come up to him and would ask him, Daddy, please learn me how to ride the bike. But Daddy didn't wait for that. Daddy compared his son with my girl. And he concluded that his son was behind in his learning curve. So his son had to ride that bike now. And that's the stupidest decision he could ever make, because it took him far more effort. They got into fights and stuff. And I can tell you, every kid in the Netherlands wants to learn to ride the bike before age 8. They will come up to you, they will ask you. And I think that's the same thing with learning, with all things we learn. Learning isn't about starting together at the same moment. It's about knowing something in the end. So we as schools should stop comparing children when they start. We should give them the opportunity to start whenever they want to, because they want to have the same end result at the end. There's a great book about this by Todd Rose. It's called The End of Average. You should read it all. So we at Agora, we don't start something because we should, but because we are inspired and motivated to do things kids hate, to achieve things they like. Well, enough about my daughter. I can also tell you a little bit about my wife. Suppose we are on a holiday and we have done a hike for an hour and a half. You know, I had the map and she was walking behind me, and then at a certain point we end up at this bridge. Then my wife would tell me, well, Rob, I'm not going to do that. And then I would do the same thing as I did like 20 years ago when I started in education and was a math teacher. I was trying to soften things up. And then, you know, at first you were doing your notes on the chalkboard, and later on you were making PowerPoint presentations out of it. And even later on, I started to make YouTube videos out of it. But I was still selling the same old stuff they didn't know how to use and when to use. So I do the same thing with my wife when we are at this bridge. I'm going to please her a little bit. So I'm going to tell her, well, if we go to the other side, there's this great restaurant, the best food in the world. You will love it. And of course, that restaurant has a great view. And it has your favorite food. So we should cross this bridge. And my wife will tell me, well, Rob, the food in the hotel yesterday wasn't bad, was it? And I don't know how it is at your home, but we are going back to the hotel then if my wife says something like that. But suppose we could do this holiday over. And like 2 days earlier, I'm at my hotel, enjoying the pool. And my wife comes out and says, well, Rob, I've just heard two people talking to the receptionist. And they said they were in the best restaurant ever. And that restaurant has my favorite food. And it has a great view. And you can do a great walk up there. Should we go there? And then I would say to my wife, well, of course, if you lead the way, I will follow. So I follow her for an hour and a half, and we end up at this bridge. I don't think my wife will give up immediately. I think she will say something to me like, well, first of all, she would never admit that she didn't recognize this bridge on the map. She will never admit that. So then she would say, well, I'm a bit scared. I don't dare to cross the bridge, but well, Rob, if you hold me tight and cover my ears, we might be able to try it. So that was one option. The other option is that my wife will look into the valley and say, well, Rob, do you think if we walk, is there a way through the village to go through the woods to get up there instead of using the bridge? And if that's not working, she would ask me, but what if we approach that mountain from the other side tomorrow, maybe by car, and get to the hotel as well? Well, what are we talking about? What we are talking about is that in this case, the goal is my wife's goal. It's the restaurant where she wants to be. So she is figuring out a lot of routes to get there. And I'm not interfering in these routes. I'm just assisting her during the process. And that's what we try to do at Agora. So students don't work on our goals, on our curriculum. They work on their goals. And what students want to learn or make comes first. And this can be everything. So in the end, students want to know the curriculum because they want to be successful in life. They know that they attend secondary school to get a secondary diploma. So they will be asking us questions along the way on how to get that diploma, what to learn on it, and get assistance on it. And that's exactly what we do. So we had 50 students this year doing their last year, and they all passed. Because they want to be successful in the end. Well, enough about my family. These kids aren't mine, but I just love the picture. And I love this picture because they all have this sponge in front of them. And a sponge is a natural product. And all these kids have, and we all have, a sponge that works in the same way. And I will explain that a little bit later. Because what I love about that natural product, that sponge, is that you don't have to force water into a sponge. You just drop it into water, pick the sponge up, and it will be wet, and you can take it with you. And our brain, and it's about the same size here with these kids, their brain is the same size as a sponge. And I'll see the brain as a sponge as well. And you don't have to force knowledge in there. That's not working. You have to put the brain in the circumstances, in the right circumstances, so the brain sucks up knowledge. So for example, if I want to learn Spanish and I would approach an Agora coach to assist me, and I would tell them that they have to buy me a Spanish school book so I can learn Spanish. If this coach knows me properly, they would laugh. They would just start laughing and ask me, Rob, what are you going to do with the book? The previous book we've bought you, you hated it, and after a week you threw it into a corner. So why are you using this Spanish book? You should figure out a route to learn Spanish in a way that suits you better. So I would think about it for a couple of days, and then I would tell them, well, I found a buddy of mine who also wants to learn Spanish. And he also loves Belgian beers, just like me. So what we are going to do, what our plan is to learn Spanish, is that we're going to meet every Tuesday evening. And I introduce a Belgian beer in Spanish to him next Tuesday. And he will do the opposite in the week after that. And I also put the beer on paper with Spanish sentences and a Spanish description. And what we get now are two very important things for me to learn Spanish. First of all, if I don't bring anything with me next Tuesday, I leave my body. I let my body down. So I don't want to do that because I'm a social person. Second, I am highly motivated because we are not talking about Spanish. We are talking about beers. And I love Belgian beers and I love to discover new ones. And because we are talking about beers and are obligated to only use Spanish words and look them up and stuff like that, we will get better at Spanish. I suppose we'll be in a nice Spanish restaurant within half a year, hopefully, after the Corona crisis. We will be in Barcelona to study Spanish and talk Spanish to the waiter there. So what we need to learn children is to place their sponge in the right circumstances. That's the most important thing schools have to do, because these kids are going to live 100 years, and about 80 years of this, they are going to live without being able to attend school. So we have to give them all the tools to keep on learning the rest of their lives. And you don't have to force knowledge in there to make this happen. So at Agora, we don't focus on knowledge transfer, only on the learning process. And what we see is that if you focus on the knowledge transfer, if you don't focus on knowledge transfer, and if you help kids to put their sponge in the right position and help them to collect whatever they want to know, then knowledge recording comes into overdrive. So if you focus on that learning process, you have to give students the chance to really play and experiment. You need to follow and observe what they are doing, not to prevent them from failing, but to know how to respond when they ask for assistance. For instance, we all want to tell our kids, don't touch this soup, it's hot. I told my daughter like 100 times. And she didn't like me for that. But I never had to tell her again after that one time she burned herself a little bit. So I believe schools are overprotective. Schools tend to prevent children from failure. But what they really do is make them anxious to fail. So we shouldn't be overprotective. We shouldn't try to prevent them from failure. We should promote children to experiment. Because this is not failure. This is a great experiment to see what's really possible. To experiment is the easiest way to learn. We all know that. What do you want to do when you see this picture? You want to build it again. There are no grades needed. It's all personal motivation. If you see it falling down, you want to build it up. If a kid sees this, they want to try again. What do you want to do when you see this? You want to try to tip it in, and if it hits the floor, you will put in the extra effort to collect the ball and try to throw it again. There are no grades needed. But what do you want to do when you see this? How do you as a teacher feel about this? What do students want to do when they see this? Do they want to tip the ball in again? Do they want to pick it up? Or are the first feelings they get giving it up, quitting? Are they thinking about that first? So of course at Agora we don't grade anything. It's about growth, not about grades. Is this boy ever going to stop skateboarding? I don't think so. Of course not. He wants to repair his board or replace it. So guys, we need to make a sport out of experimenting. We need to promote creativity. We all need to learn to love our experiments and don't call them failures. An experiment is never about failure. It's always about growth. It leads to learning. And learning is experimenting, reflecting, anticipating, and trying again. And during the experimenting phase, teachers should be observing. And during the reflection phase, teachers should use all their knowledge to ask the right questions, not tell the answers. So at Agora, we give kids a chance to experiment, to be creative, and help them reflect. We help them to ask themselves the right questions. And a good school should let you fail or experiment every day because they want you to learn. So if we don't put any effort in knowledge transfer, what do you do when a kid comes up to you and asks questions about the Great Barrier Reef? Well, I just tell them, Google it, or even better, Google him or her. A couple of years ago, I had some kids who even asked me to get a biology teacher from the school next door because they know I know them. Because I had questions about the Great Barrier Reef. I asked these kids, I know the guy next door. I know that biology teacher, but I also know that he doesn't know anything about the Great Barrier Reef. I never heard him talk about fish or about the ocean or about reefs or whatever. So what do you think that he's going to do when I ask him to come over tomorrow? What is he going to do this evening? And these kids told me immediately, he's going to Google it. He's going to read books about it. And I told these kids, why aren't you Googling it and reading the same books? Because then you can use Google to approach the one behind the article, because that's probably the guy who is studying the Great Barrier Reef in Australia and really has up-to-date knowledge and up-to-date answers. And these kids did that. They were Dutch kids, 12-year-olds, learned to write and read a letter in English, sent it to Australia, and got into Skype meetings with people who were studying the Great Barrier Reef. So we should learn students to find it. And we should learn students that most knowledge is outside school. We should promote people to go out and not stay in the school. So at Agora, we promote them to leave the school and come back and tell us what they learned. And then we can reflect on it. And if they come back, they also want to put all their data and info, they wanted to put it somewhere in a system. So we needed a digital learning environment that supported us. And we couldn't find that system. So then Rafael, Baruch, and Ruben, a couple of students of ours, came up to me. They were like 13 and 14 years old then. And they said, well, it's great, all these personal challenges, but we want to make a difference for other people. We want to do something meaningful. And I asked them, what do you want to learn? And Rafael replied, I want to be a programmer. And Ruben said, I want to do agile scrum mastering because then I can become a good manager of a company. And Baruch said, I wanted to be a graphics designer. So I told them, you should make our digital learning environment. And that's what they did. And it looks like this. So here you can see the phases of a challenge. It starts with promotion, with the preparation. Kids should write down why they really want to figure something out or make something. And then they go into this execution phase where they log what they are doing and what they found out. And at the end, they do a footprint phase in which they make a video or a sculpture or a website or whatever reflects their product. And then at the end, we do also a reflection phase. So kids can even divide their challenge into 3 smaller parts and make a Kanban board out of this. And all these challenges go into one big list. And all these blue squares are challenges of one kid. So here, if you look closely at the left, you can see this kid is really into psychology because of all the challenges she did in there. And then they said, well, we also have to establish something where you can measure growth. So they made something for that as well. They made a software for that as well. And 2 years later, I'm just jealous because they made a company out of it. And this is their spread of innovation. So they're selling their product in these countries. And this is the spread of Agora at the moment with schools. If you don't see it, will address it a little bit. We are only in Belgium and in the Netherlands. So what we do at Agora is we, with a lot of respect, treat all our students unequal, not equal, unequal, because everybody deserves that. We train students to embrace the fact that the future is uncertain. We train them to take a firm look at it, be amazed and confident about it, so that they can grow for life. And we train them so they know that learning is a social activity, networking is a two-way street. We want them to become the social networkers of the future. So people, please, starting today, forget what you know about teaching and how schools are organized. Start with what you really know about learning. Thanks, guys.
Rob, thank you very much. I'm going to give you a one-man round of applause.
Two man.
Amazing. I don't know if you saw there, but the last couple of minutes we were just putting some comments on the screen from people. One from Patrick McGrath there. He thinks Rob is the educational equivalent of Elon Musk, dreamer and achiever. That's quite an accolade, quite some praise there, Rob. Rob, we're going to have to go for the break, but we just want to say again, congratulations. And I'm sure everybody will now know that award is well deserved. And thank you for inspiring us. Thank you for.
Can I say one little thing?
Yeah,
yeah, because I can't do this on my own. It's not my idea. We did this with a lot of people, and I thank them all. So I even can tell you that I can speak about it very proudly, but it's a hell of a job, and it has a lot of ups and downs, and we still have a lot of ups and downs. But thanks, guys.
Thanks, Rob.